Hello again, everybody. Randy Ray here, the Literate Texan, and welcome back to Driftwood Ranch. Today, I'm going to start a series of videos that is a bookshelf tour, and eventually, if I stick with it, and that's questionable. It's not questionable, I'll probably stick with this. But anyway, eventually, I hope to show you every book that I own. And you may notice something a little different about this video. You see the bookshelf that's always sitting there behind me when I film these videos. That top shelf is empty because I brought them over here to my desk so that I could show you the books that are over there. So these are not necessarily in the order that I have them shelved, but it's close. The first is a stack of books by Chuck Palahniuk. And most people, I suspect, come to Chuck Palahniuk's works because of Fight Club, which was, reasonably successful film, and I think a pretty good one. I like the novel okay, but I think he's written better books. He's also written much worse books too. I don't have a complete collection of Chuck Palahniuk, but I've got quite a few of his books on my Kindle too. And in terms of bookshelf tours, I don't know that I'm going to go over every book that I have on my Kindle because that would take even longer than going over all my physical books. But here's what I've got. I've got Survivor, which I have not read, but it's about a guy named Tender Branson, who is the last surviving member of the so-called Creedish death cult. This was probably written before The Office. But, if I see the word Creedish, it's like, man, it's great that Creed Bratton got his own adjective right. Anyway, he's dictating his life story into the flight recorder of Flight 2039. Cruising on autopilot at 39,000 feet somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. And like most of Palahniuk's books, it's fairly short, probably really easy to read. Palahniuk's books are really great if you're looking for something you can finish in an evening. I came to Chuck Palahniuk through a novel called Lullaby, which is still my favorite of his novels. It's about a guy who learns a spell called a culling song, which he can use to kill someone instantly. And of course, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Terrific book. The next one I have here is called Damned. And this one I have read, okay? I love the cover art. And I like this. Madison is the 13-year-old daughter of a narcissistic film star and a billionaire. Abandoned at her Swiss boarding school for Christmas, she dies over the holiday, presumably of a marijuana overdose. Do people really die from marijuana overdoses? I don't know. I didn't think that was possible. Maybe it is. This one I really liked, surprisingly enough. It's Snuff. It's about a porn star who is going to have sex with 600 dudes. And again, really short, surprising in certain ways. At least it was for me. Maybe it wouldn't be for other people. I still have the receipts for some of these in these books. And this is called Invisible Monsters. This one I bought at a library sale, so it's already covered in that plastic and stuff. I haven't read this one yet either. Funny. And then Adjustment Day. I started Adjustment Day. I did not finish Adjustment Day. I didn't like it. The premise is that all of these wacky social groups that we've organized ourselves into, Republicans, Democrats, etc., all get their own places in the country so that they can live the way they want to live and what the after effects of that are like. The problem is that none of the characters are particularly likable. The plot is outlandish in the extreme. Anyway, yeah, I just didn't like it. Maybe I'll give it another shot. Maybe I was just in a bad mood. But that's my Chuck Palahniuk collection from that top shelf behind me. That is a total of, I believe, 5 books, maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then next to those, I have the First Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, which I haven't finished. I haven't even really started. The first book in the series is called The Blade Itself. Its covers are beautiful. It's soft covers. Before They Are Hanged and Last Argument of Kings. But the First Law Trilogy, I guess these 3 books were the first ones, but they also use First Law to refer to the entire series of books. So I'm looking forward to digging into it because my understanding is that the First Law Trilogy is, classic sword and sorcery kind of stuff. Kind of grim dark, and definitely sounds like something I'd enjoy. Big commitment though, those are long books. Also, on this shelf, this is not the only Emily St. John Mandel book that I have. I'm not even sure that I'm pronouncing that correctly. It might be Mandel. But this is my favorite. This is called The Glass Hotel. And I may be in the minority in terms of having this as my favorite. Most people are really into Station 11 right now, which I haven't read yet. But I love this, and I have all her books. I don't know why they're not on that shelf behind me. They're here somewhere. Well, I have 2 Travis McGee novels, Nightmare in Pink and The Deep Blue Goodbye. And I like the Travis McGee novels. They seem a little misogynistic in this day and age, but heck, he wrote these in the 70s, and I try not to judge authors by the era in which they live. He probably thought he was fairly progressive, but I think there were like 24 books in this series. Travis McGee lives on a houseboat that he won in a poker game. The houseboat is called the Busted Flush. He's sort of a private detective character, probably one of the inspirations for Simon and Simon, which if you're not my age, you probably don't remember. But yeah, good stuff. Set in Florida. I've always meant to read the whole series. Stephen King is a big fan of John D. MacDonald. I definitely like these John D. MacDonald books better than some of the other John D. MacDonald books that I've read that weren't part of this series. The Girl, the Gold Watch, and Everything was an awful movie. In fact, the movie was worse than the books, and the books weren't particularly great. But these, they're pretty good. I also have a trilogy here from David Wellington that I kept from my all horror bookstore days. I guess this is probably called the Monster Trilogy, but it's Monster Island, Monster Nation, and Monster Planet, which I thought was a really clever way of titling the trilogy. It's a zombie series. And of course, in terms of zombie series, the original is Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. So keeping that kind of continuity of growing from small to large from book to book is kind of a nice but very subtle homage to the original. He's a solid writer, this David Wellington. It's action stuff. It's real easy. People talk about how many pages per hour they read. And I think there's a certain amount of that toxic productivity there, and I try not to focus on it too much. But I also like numbers. But I read on average 60 pages per hour. On average. But for something like these books that are real easy, I can read about 90 words per hour. That's about 90 pages per hour, excuse me. And that's about how fast I read, like some of the romance novels that my daughter and I like to read. And, some of the Book of the Month Club books are real easy. 90 pages an hour is no big deal. But sometimes I read a little slower. Some books just have a lot more words per page. I just finished reading Last Exit by Max Gladstone. And that was about 40 pages per hour. But anyway, you can zoom through these monster books by David Wellington. And if you're into zombies, like The Walking Dead, definitely go with the Monster Trilogy over some of those licensed novels because, man, the governor was my favorite character on the TV show, The Walking Dead. So I was real excited about these Rise of the Governor novels that came out. They were awful. Just terrible. Looked like they hadn't been edited at all. What a disappointment. So I also have Philip Pullman's trilogy here, His Dark Materials, which I've been meaning to read for years now. I remember when the movie came out at the theater, and I really loved the film. I started the HBO miniseries that came out recently and didn't fall in love with it immediately, but I'd be willing to go back and give it another look. The stack of books is already falling over here. It's like playing Jenga with books. So, next, I have a trilogy of books here from Mervyn Peake. Titus Grown, Titus Alone, and Gormenghast, which, if I wanted to give you a really absurd summation, it's about a castle. I haven't read it yet. Know it by reputation. There's Titus Grown. I believe this is the third, but these are some of these classics of epic fantasy that they say everybody should read. So we'll see. I have a feeling I'll like it if it's not too Kafkaesque. Ugh, Kafka wears me out. That's the subject for another video. I went on a Cory Doctorow binge a couple years ago, and most of my Cory Doctorow novels are in ebook format, but I do have Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, which I really enjoyed. A lot of transhumanism themes going on in here. And then Eastern Standard Tribe, which I read but don't remember well enough to have an opinion on. And then I also have The Rapture of the Nerds, Cory Doctorow and Charles Stross. And I don't think I've read this one yet either. No, definitely haven't read this one yet. Just looked at the back cover and didn't recognize it. It's the dusk of the 21st century, and Earth has a population of 1 billion or so. For the most part, we're happy with our lot. I don't know. That sounds hard to imagine given the day and age that we're living in. Because we're not, anyway, yeah, no, seems unlikely to me. I read Leaving Las Vegas by John O'Brien last year and loved it. I'd seen the movie a couple times. Terrific film. I liked the book even better. So I went ahead and bought all of John O'Brien's other books. There aren't many. He died young. But I have Better. I haven't read any of these yet. Love the cover art on this. And then The Assault on Tony's, which I'm real excited about reading now that I look at it, because it's about a bunch of guys hanging out at a bar. And I guess the you-know-what hits the fan, and it's about what they do in the bar after the you-know-what hits the fan. So, but just reading the, advertising material for it and stuff, it sounds a lot like the bar that I used to hang out in, which wasn't particularly unusual, I don't think. It was just small. It was small and full of people who really like to drink. And then there's a novel called Stripper Lessons. I love that title, right? So it's about one man's obsessive search to belong. So I don't know if hanging out at a strip club is the place to figure out where you belong. I don't know. Probably not. That's my guess. Blake Crouch, Pines. Wasn't crazy about this one, but I do like a lot of Blake Crouch's stuff. And if it weren't for Blake Crouch, I never would have found Amor Towles, who's become one of my favorite authors. I think Gentleman in Moscow, it's one of my favorite books. Might even be in my top 10. It was terrific. And I only know who the author is because he used his name for a character in one of his novels and mentioned that in the credits. So, and then there's Dark Matter, which I liked. In the other room, I have Blake Crouch's novel Recursion, which is one of those time loop kind of novels, like Groundhog Day kind of thing. And then I've got the beginnings of a Kurt Vonnegut collection here, 2 books. I've got Cat's Cradle and Slaughterhouse Five. I think most Vonnegut fans would probably think these are his 2 best books. Cat's Cradle is far and away my favorite Vonnegut book. It was the first one I read, and it's still the best. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think I've read everything for all of Kurt Vonnegut's novels at this point in my life, although I don't necessarily remember them all. So that is bookshelf tour number 1. That is a total of 1, 2, 3, 13, 16, 22, 27. That's a total of 30 books. And I finished in 14 minutes. I think that's amazing to talk about 14 books or talk about 30 books in 14 minutes. So, but it's a little easier since I hadn't read most of them. So, I'm not going to make every book I've ever owned that I plan to read, my physical TBR list, like I've seen some YouTubers make, because I'm one of these booktubers who have too many books that he hadn't read yet. And, but I'm catching up, man. I'm working hard at it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll have new videos coming up soon.